Guys, welcome back to the Macro Golf Podcast. Today is a very, very special episode because we have our first guest on the podcast. He's our first guest and he's a very special guest. It is Dave Bartlett, Golf Professional. Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Joe. It's a real honour to be your first guest. And one day when this Spotify is sold to Spotify for £90 million, then I want to have one piece of that. Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. Your studio is incredible.
Oh, thank you.
I'm so impressed and so excited to be here. So thank you.
You do have to stand up though, as you be there now.
Yeah.
We don't have chairs, unfortunately, for a good reason, because we don't believe in being sat down for a long period. So when you leave here, you're going to feel energized. You're going to feel your hips are going to feel amazing, and you got us to thank.
Okay, great.
There you go. We've got loads of stuff to go through tonight, this afternoon, and we've got loads of questions that we want to go through with you. But what would be really nice is just to give a bit of intro of who you are, where people can find a little bit more information about you if they want to go and like Google you while you're talking and find out what you look like, because I do that sometimes with podcasts. And also just a little bit about your history, like how you went into golf, what you're currently doing, where people can kind of interact with you from now.
Okay, cool. Well, if you want to find me, firstly, if you Google David Bartlett Golf Professional, there'll be some pictures of me, but most of those pictures are from when I first turned pro around about 23 years old. I had like really long hair and a huge beard. And I was a little bit more gangly then as well. I mean, I'm fairly gangly now, but like, I think you'll get a better understanding of who I am now if you go to Instagram, go to Dave Bartlett Golf Professional, and you'll see some videos where I do some kind of like little golf tips and stuff. And some of that is fitness related. So I'm kind of into it, and I've been following your guys' journey on what you're doing and how you're helping golfers, etc. Oh, Joe's just showing me a picture now. Oh my God.
Look
at that.
Absolutely love that hair.
That was good. Well, when I say that was good. Yeah,
that's going to be the cover of the podcast, I think.
No, please, no. So I've been following your journey as well, and you guys have obviously done an awful lot offline, and now you're starting to do some stuff in person as well, which is great. And I think hopefully we can just chat about a few things where we might share some ideas which are either the same or maybe slightly different.
Brilliant. I want to start with a question then. So, what physical limitations do you see coaching players that might hold back progress?
Most people aren't moving much anyway, as you guys know, and most people's timing for their round is pretty poor in as much as they come hurtling in last minute, and they'll definitely prioritise bacon bap over hitting balls or any kind of mobility. So they're flawed from the start generally, but I think most people, their sort of disassociation of their upper body relative to their lower body is poor, so turning is difficult, but actually, having said that, some people have very, very good mobility and they don't utilise it at all, just from poor movement patterns. So you see somebody that doesn't rotate their body or turn their back on the target, but actually does have that available to them, and they're just fundamentally flawed from the ground up. So they don't move correctly from the get-go to be able to rotate. So people are missing out on a whole host of distance and consistency, even though they're not utilising what they've got. But biggest ones I think are shoulders. So I ask a lot of my clients what they do for a living, and a lot of people that are sat down are kind of really tight in the shoulder and don't have external rotation of the shoulder, let's say, to be able to get the club in a better position on the way down, create enough depth in the backswing to be able to get that club moving the way it should do. So I would say, ability to rotate and shoulder mobility also from poor posture at work.
Yeah.
What's the typical way of when you say that people have that movement there, but they're not really using it? Like, what do you typically see as ways of like unlocking that movement? Because something I do in here sometimes is get people to say, just swing fast, see what happens.
Yeah. Right.
And sometimes when they're just not thinking of the golf, luckily we can do it in here without having to hit a golf ball as a consequence. And sometimes they then start to rotate a little bit, or they start to move a little bit. And they're like, oh, well, actually, like I didn't know I had that movement. What do you do when you actually got someone in front of you for a lesson that you're like, I think you can move a little bit more than that, and they're not displaying it? Is there any like tricks that you might use to trigger a little bit more movement?
Totally, yeah. I mean, I think people learn differently. So some people are very good at watching something and then they can change it and adapt. And some people can respond really well to an audio cue, and you can say, right, just turn your back on the target more, and they do it. Most people don't have that ability. So I'm big into moving people.
Yeah.
So I was saying, oh, you're here, show me what you do, and then hold a position. And most people can replicate that position either in slow motion or in isolation. And then I'll move them and say, actually, this is where you are. I'd love it if you could feel here. I'll do that responsibly so I don't break them in half, right? But I will move them, and they'll be like, oh my God, what there? Yeah. And there's like an alarm bell that goes off in their mind. They think, actually, I'm a mile away from where I need to be right now when you move them. So for me, it's that. And then once I've moved them a few times into that position, I was like, see if you can do that without me. And then once they've done it a few times, and then I might film them as well. So although ultimately I don't really care what their swing looks like, I just want it to be effective and repeatable. When you show them the position, they all got some sort of understanding of what a good position looks like. They go, wow, that looks much more like a golf swing. Yeah. But they really need to feel it. And so that's what I do.
Like an awareness and space thing, right? They can kind of understand, like, it's a bit of like a lost zone for them. Like, when do they ever move their arms outside of their body normally, right? They don't move their hands are in here. So it's like a lost area of like them not being aware, maybe of like where their body even is. They might feel like they're turning, but they're not, right? Like that also could be. That's interesting. That's knowledge bomb number one for me.
Yeah, move people. Like but I ask first as well. If I think somebody's frail and that I might just knock them over, then I'll say, is it okay if I just move you a little bit?
So what's it's one of the questions I wanted to ask, because I try and ask this to everyone that comes in that like really has experienced a lot of golf swings. What's the most common fault that you see? So I suppose that's a combination of ball flight, what's the most common ball flight issue that you see, and then what's generally the most common swing fault? If you were to categorise, I know it's difficult to, but what would be the most common that you would see most common people?
I think of it slightly differently, because I think there's faults and there's characteristics, and there are compensations which make it look like the compensation is the fault. So an example is someone goes, I can tell you what I'm doing wrong, I'm falling off of it, I'm falling backwards, I'm lifting up. All of those things, I will say to them generally, okay, well that's good, you need that, because the falling back is the saving move for other stuff that went wrong, Okay. So in terms of like the stuff that I see, let's say somebody that tops it, their weight ends up behind it, they've got loads of right bend impact, they can't rotate, those kind of things, normally a reaction to like a poor club face angle or something that they've done fundamentally poor in the setup. So getting somebody set up correctly, getting them moving correctly in the backswing, I pretty much honestly say I've never taught anybody weight transfer. Because pretty much everybody can do that. And some people will say, well, I can do it when there's no ball. Well, the ball doesn't care, the fresh air doesn't care about club face angle, doesn't care how steep you are. Yeah. And actually you're a foot off the floor when you're doing a swing anyway. So it's pretty as it is, it's not really how you swing it. And like I said, it's a good thing that you don't swing it that way, because you'll never find target if you get your weight transfer right. So in terms of most common, it's that falling back action, losing the low point control of the club in an attempt to get the face back on it.
And is that a typical demographic that you would see in that environment? Is that a typical, is that a desk worker? Is that an older golfer, a young golfer? What can you categorise kind of where that initial fault sits, or is that across the board?
I would 100% say that that's across the board. Yeah, like with the exception of like young juniors have this line of ability to kind of feel like they hit through it and not at it. And I think that comes from less understanding perhaps, and just swinging the club with no consequence. Don't see many juniors kind of falling back trying to help it in the air. They just kind of swing the club and accept what happens. Whereas a lot of people don't have an understanding of, say, a 48-degree wedge, launches at 27 degrees, so therefore it's coming down by X amount of degrees. They're thinking they've got to add loft somewhere. So they're trying to find a way of just trying to add more loft to a club. So actually when they fall back, their 47 degrees has become 57 and they've hit the roof of the driving range.
That's where those dents come from. You see those dents, you're like, how did that dent get there?
Yeah,
that's that guy.
So that happens, and I'd say that's relatively common. So that would be very frustrating for that golfer to be trying to work on, I need to be more balanced, etc. When actually that's actually only going to fundamentally make them hit it worse, get to the root of the problem. And I'm sure we'll get into, a lot of the time there are some issues with the person's mobility, which is always forcing them into that position, which looks a bit unsightly.
We're going to move on to mobility, but I want to say one thing before that. So we done a clinic at your old one evening. I remember when you said that to someone there, and I think you might have said it to one individual or to the group, when you said, like, oh, you're falling off it, like, great, because that means you actually hit the ball, right? Like, if you didn't fall off it, you wouldn't even make contact with the ball. And when you first said that, I was like, that's so true, right? The reason why they're falling back is not because they lack balance or they lack different things, and that's why they're falling off. They're falling off it because they're trying to make contact with the ball. The only way they can make contact with the ball is to go, oh my god, I've got to like fall back and try and do something. When you said that, I was like, wow, that's like, makes sense, right? When you think about it, but we always think of we try and solve the thing that we can see often. Would you? I know I'm going off topic because I want to go to mobility, but Would you also put like an early extension move in that same category? Because I
A
get
lot
asked
of
a
the
lot
time.
about early extension,
Yeah.
and I don't think that. The reason I ask is because I get asked a lot about early extension, and people saying, "Oh, is that because my hips are tight?" And I was like, "Well, I don't." My guess, and I want your expert opinion, is they're not early extended because their hips are tight. They're early extended because something else in their golf swing is happening.
Yeah.
That might be happening because their hips are tight, but the early extension is not the problem. If that makes
Yes.
sense. Is that,
I would say
am I on
it's
the right
very
answer?
100% Joe. Like I think there's always something going on. Not always. There are some flexibility issues. So you know yourself, like there will be some early extension if there's some flexibility issues. But it's ordinarily a last ditch effort to somehow get that club back on it.
Yeah.
Okay. So as much as keeping your ass against the wall, kind of feel rotating around that keeping posture is great. Do you again have that face angle to be able to get it back on it to find the target? So like I said, the ball won't care really about whether you early extend or not. It will just kind of care where it's gone. With the early extension, which is let's say hips moving towards the golf ball versus sort of staying stable and rotary, comes extension in the spine. So as soon as you move your hips towards the golf ball, your spine's going to want to extend. So your angles of your arms and wrists have all got to unwind a little bit differently to how a real solid impact would look. So you see a lot of people that try and create this desirable impact position of trying to get the handle ahead and squash the golf ball, etc., and compress it into the ground. It's going to be very difficult to do with that kind of movement. And if they're trying to do that, invariably they're going to end up with a pretty damn open club face, which is in to out. Yeah. And it doesn't find target, and that's infuriating. So if they get control over the face angle, they got a chance.
Yeah, I do. That's one thing I love about your coaching methods. And anytime I've spent time with you and heard you doing things, like it is very much about how do we get ball to target. Like that is a huge primary focus of what you're doing, which is, it's crazy to think that we even need to consider that there's methods that don't focus about how do we get the ball to the target, right? Like that's, what else are we doing if we're not trying to get ball to target? What else are we doing? I
gave a golf lesson probably a year ago to a guy playing off +1, and good ball striker, hits it better than I do, so he's very good. No, I jest. Really good, and he goes, just like my distance control's off. But you look at his if you filmed his rhythm, it looks incredible. If you look at his swing length, it looks incredible. He can hit a variety of shots. He can hit any shot he wants. He just doesn't end up to within tapping range. He's just missing birdie putts from short range. And I just said to him, like, do you ever look where you're going? He's like, what? I said, do you ever look? And he's like, no, I don't. Which is mad, and particularly from say 100 yards and in, I'm sure there are some elite golfers that have the ability to be able to line up from down the line, see a shot, come over the golf ball and not look at target. But imagine if you're over the golf ball an awfully long time thinking about how to perform something, you're not reacting at all. So that last look to target, to try and visualize a shot and see how your body can respond to that. If you still have to think about how to do it while you're out playing golf, you haven't trained it enough. So train it, but also train it looking at a target as well and trying to actually have some intent level with the shot. Most people don't have a level of intent. They're trying to hit it too straight. So
yeah, and I think also with that, like that's the guy that can do it is the guy that can spend 6 or 7 hours a day doing it. Right? They got the time to actually dial it exactly where that arm needs to be in that field, that exact position. Where if you don't have the opportunity to do that, you've got to utilise what you do have, which is some level of instinct, right, of distance control, of like hopefully trying to recall some previous information of what you can then see, of then trying to execute on that, because you've not got the time to dial in your wedges with the TrackMan for 7 hours a day. Right?
And people are very good at, like, there's certain holes you would have played around here and other golf courses that you would have played frequently. There's just certain holes that just suit your eye, and you've hit so many good shots there. It almost is like a formality. You hit a good one, and the holes you don't like, you'll be so surprised when you hit a good one, because you weren't mentally ready to hit a good shot. You've almost got to rip your rule book up here and say, right, I always hit driver here and I always go out of bounds. I'm going to hit a 9-iron off the tee today, just so that I do something different. People aren't playing that game. People are playing the swing game. I played in a pro event many, many years ago, and I was 3 under after 14. And I remember the 15th hole was like a 90-degree dogleg, the worst hole in the world. And every time I played it, I made 7, made triples, par 4. Par 5, sorry. And I remember hitting like a wedge off the tee on a par 5, because it was the only shot I could see. I hit wedge, like 5-iron or something like that onto the green, and then just 2-putted in. It was just like, this is the nicest par I've ever made in my life. I couldn't get my head around how to play it. It was just such a quirky hole. And I did all right in that event in the end, and I was just like really chuffed with myself.
Yeah.
And I came away from that thinking, wow, you did something really different and quite ballsy there.
Yeah.
And I got quite a lot of enjoyment out of that. And that for me has kind of paved my thought process on how I play golf, which can be a bit wild, but I like to try and do some funny shots as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I like to hit high draws, low fades, etc., versus trying to be
hit that
arrow
same
straight
stock shot, and
Yeah.
actually by trying to create those different shapes, you're being more present, so you're allowing yourself a better opportunity to hit the shots,
Yeah.
rather than just, like you said, those amateurs setting up saying, right, I'm just going to try and hit this dead straight. Right.
Yeah.
I've got stuck into that recently with irons. That resonates a lot with me. I got stuck into that. You know, I'm getting very, very focused on the movement and seeing a straight shot. Where actually, you kind of lose so much that's out there. Like there's so much more out there than what's going on in your little space, right? And actually, that information is really useful for us. That was good.
Yeah.
I like that. Let's move on to the mobility then.
Yeah, come on. This is the Joe Macro podcast.
I know Sam's actually got a question on mobility, so you can ask yours and then I'll come.
Yeah, hit me with that, Sam. Let's go.
So how mobile do you need to be to play good golf?
So you're viewing it mobility slightly differently to flexibility, are we saying? Yeah.
Yeah. So being able to have use through that motion rather than just saying, right, I can get my arm externally rotated.
I think so. If you look at anyone that was a good golfer that was playing off single figures in their 20s and they maintained a pretty good level, but then their work got in the way and they came back to it. They weren't as flexible as they were, let's say, but they get it back. Let's say they get it back in their late 40s and early retirement, and they've done it for a long time and they've just stayed on top of it. They maintain a good level for a long time, but their frequency of play goes up, but slowly they get worse. They decline. So I'm of the opinion of it's like little and often, don't stop, in terms of like what you're trying to do to kind of maintain mobility. I was in the sauna the other day, which is something I like to do maybe 5 times a week because it's good.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And I was watching people get out of the sauna from being sat in it, and I was like, I don't ever want to get like that, because everyone was, is that the wood creaking or is that person? Do you know what I mean? So, but I'm in there now, and I'm thinking about this when I'm sat down, when I have the luxury of sitting down doing a podcast. But when I
slight jab at us there.
when I'm like sat down, like my new little thing now is like I'm gonna get up promptly, like an athlete. Right, that's my decision now. So when I'm in the sauna, I don't hop out, but I try and not get out of it like an old man. Right, so. And I'm just looking at some of my mates that are my age, and I think, God, you're finished. You're absolutely finished. There's no coming back for you now. I don't mean that. There's hope for them. There's hope for them. There's hope for everybody. There's hope for everybody. But I'm just thinking, well, if they put a bit more into it, then they'll probably have these little aches and pains will disappear. But so much of it is the consistency of just doing it and stuff as well.
It's really interesting what you said there was kind of little and often. It's something that mirrors exactly what me and Joe have been talking about in our Habits podcast, that just 5 minutes a day makes such a difference over a decade, over a lifetime. Like, it can be the difference between you playing twice a week to not playing at all, playing once every month or so, and being in too much pain to play anymore.
At that tail end of your golfing career, so, and actually I'd be interested to know some stats in terms of what somebody's overall health is like that plays 80 years old, comparable with an 80-year-old that doesn't play golf, that's maybe less active. Because having been golf for a long time, I'm like, when people say their age to me and they're a member at the golf club, I'm so blown away by, actually, I thought you were like 65 when they were 80, and somebody's 90 and I thought they were 70 something. I'm like, wow, you look great. So I think there's an element of keeping it youthful, but they're playing 5 times a week. And I know guys in their late 20s, they were knackered after 18 holes. And the frequency is a big deal, I think. And I'm sure we could mention it at some point, but like, I'm big into kind of like resistance training. Resistance training for me is kind of the thing. And if you can keep on, you might say otherwise, it's not the thing, it's cardio. But I'm going to suggest that you might think similarly to how I do.
Just a little bit.
Okay, good. That's good. That's good. Good. Okay, so resistance and just people using their muscles more for little bits of the day is kind of where it's at, you know, for me. And if you can keep it going, there's a couple of guys that I know that play golf that are in 70s. I see them in the gym and they all bomb it. They bomb it. and I was doing some group lessons with ladies from the gym that haven't played golf before, and 2 lessons in, they all bomb it. They hit it miles, and it's just like, and their anticipation of it or understanding of it is like, is that good? I don't know, is that good? Yeah. Well, yeah, you already hit it longer than everyone that's a member.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay, cool. So maybe I could play then. Yeah, you can play for sure. And that sort of fundamental fitness level, not fitness so much, but like strength, mobility, is such a key asset. I mean, it's just like, there's so many 70-year-olds, they're still hitting over 240 yards carry, and it's like, this is very impressive.
I think what's really fun about that is sometimes like the work that we do gets a bit of a bad rap because it gets labelled in the case of like people going on the course and trying to just out-muscle golf courses, and they're training for golf and they're speed training, they're going to try and just hit it as far as they can and bomb it and do this type of thing. So actually, like, when we actually take it to that different demographic and say, actually look at these ladies that you mentioned or the seniors at the club, these guys can benefit so much from like the ones that have been doing it regularly and they've kept it up, or the ones that then start to take some stuff up later on in life. Their benefits are almost percentage greater than some of the younger guys, because the difference for them of adding 50 yards is like insane, right? The difference of the scoring they can do, because they keep it on fairways, they keep it pretty straight, pretty steady, and the difference is they can have a bit of speed and a bit of distance to that. Like the difference is massive for them, and they're going to enjoy it more. And when we're then talking about all of the other benefits that come from doing some health and health well-being, from strength training, from mobility training, from the fact that they can probably get around the house as well and clean the house and have no problems getting up and down off chairs and doing all that stuff. The golf is then the bit that's the performance side, where they get all the result then of the daily habits and the longevity and the lifestyle as well. Like, I think it's such a cool demographic to mention when we talk about this stuff, because it's so easy to just lump it with pro golfers and young, strong athletes that are going to work on it. It's like everyone can benefit from moving a little bit better, being a little bit stronger, and as I said, hitting it a little further and swinging a little bit faster as well.
I think for the pros, it's like it's a real enhancement, and it's giving them a few extra percentage chances. It's such a tight level at the top, so if they can focus for longer because they're more mentally and physically prepared, that's a big deal. But it almost has more effect at the other end, in my opinion. So you're going to help a tour pro for sure, and maybe that second place became a win. But what you guys are doing is you're keeping people playing for years longer, and that's the difference. Which is why you can go home and hopefully you guys go to bed not stood up and you actually have beds. Like maybe you like sit down or chill for a minute. Maybe you just like lie down. But maybe you can lie in your bed knowing actually you've like fundamentally helped people play longer. Yeah. And you don't know how valuable that is to that person. Like I've taken some wins in my past where this has happened many times, more than a dozen, where somebody, this is my last ditch effort. If this lesson doesn't work, I'm giving up. I'm like, oh, no pressure then. Like first time I've seen them, Yeah. It's like, actually, maybe this person just needs to rekindle some bit of enjoyment from their golf. It's just like, there isn't going to be a secret fix. Sometimes there is, actually. Sometimes they just grip it terribly and they just need a grip change and they're good. But if you can keep them playing longer, brilliant. And what you guys are doing is fundamentally helping that golfer add, who knows, 5-10 years to their playing careers.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
If you get any of those golfers in, give them a seat. Maybe they can sit on the. They can sit on your. They can sit.
They jump on anything they can. Tell us a little bit about your training, because I've been following your fitness journey for a while. You're quite active about posting that on Instagram, and your journey of, as you said, you enjoy strength training. I would say that your training is very, very. I hate the word functional, but it's very much more like. You incorporate a lot of movements. You probably don't need to spend too much time on typical mobility, because the movements that you go through naturally, you take your body through all these positions. Just talk through a little bit about like your philosophy of training, how long you've been doing that for, what you enjoy doing, the benefits you've seen from yourself from that type of training that you've been following. Cool.
Okay, so maybe some of the things that I would say post on Instagram will be less interesting in terms of what I do volume wise. So for me, I'm trying to create more strength. So I like a few things to like try and measure. So for me, like I do the exciting things like the box jumps and the muscle ups and the pull ups and the explosive things. I like that. I like kettlebells and lots of things that are quite balance orientated as well. So like what I would call the fun stuff, and it's kind of things that are a bit binary. You can either do a muscle up or you can't do it. So I like stuff like that, because the idea of not being able to do it is crippling. Like, I just want to be able to do stuff. So that's good. But when it comes to weightlifting, everybody can do weightlifting. It's just that everybody can do either X amount of weight or X amount of reps. Okay, so I work on a bit of a basis of I want to be strong in real certain areas, which are pretty non-golf specific, just for general strength and fitness. So I work off a bit of a basis, and you guys will probably know better on the stats than me. But for, say, a bench press, for example, I want to be able to do 10 reps of my own body weight, which I can do, and then I want to be able to do 1 rep of my body weight plus 50%. So, and that is what is considered, from the study that I've done, is what would be considered a good level of strength for that particular exercise. And say a deadlift from the floor, so just a barbell with some weights on, I'm 60 something kilos, not a lot, so maybe 63. Can I rep 1 rep at least double body weight? Well, I think that's a good measurement of strength to say, actually, yeah, you're doing okay. And if you can't, go back. Yeah. What can you do 10 reps of? And once you can do 10 reps of something, can you up the weight and then gradually increase? So a typical gym workout for me will be focused on one area of the day, whether it's back, whether it's chest, whether it's arms, whether it's legs. Focus on those areas, and then typically sets of 12 times 3 before I move on to the next exercise. But during that sort of that session of what might be considered boring weight training, you know, kind of shoulder press, lat pull down, squats, all those things that are kind of pretty generic, I'll throw in some stuff which is kind of a little bit more movement-y, just to kind of test out. And there is an element of cardio to that as well.
I'd call it play. I think you play.
Sure.
Right? Like,
yeah.
It's like I sometimes say, give this to some of my clients. I want to kind of do some play, like some balance stuff, some messing around, some pulling yourself up, pulling yourself down. Like it's more play that you add in, which I think actually for you adds an element of, you know, if we actually get scientific with it, you're probably adding a good level of stability, control, core strength. Like, you're ticking these boxes, but it's definitely more like fun and more play based. Yeah. That I didn't know what your normal training looked like because I didn't see it, but like which accompanies a foundation of strength training.
Yes,
essentially, right? Like, you've got your boring foundation, but then you do this like fun, like fluffy stuff, like on top of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a little bit more creative with it as well. And anything that I can't do, I enjoy more, because I just kind of want to do it more as well. So until I can do it and stuff and what have you. So I think the order is to get the basics right, get really, really good at the basics. You know, particularly people who struggle with shoulder injuries and they don't do the boring shoulder exercises. And I've been guilty of that before. It's just like, I want to pound out a load of shoulder press. But actually, all those little moves that you do using cables and stuff and what have you, just to build up little smaller muscles around to get stability in your shoulder, in your knee, all those areas where there's a lot of pressure in the golf swing. Having all that at your disposal is super, super important. And
I know you, because we've spoken about before, you went on a journey of trying to gain some weight and gain some muscle and that thing. Just, if you don't mind, just like talking a little bit about that like journey and how that's been a bit of a struggle for you, probably because of your lifestyle, that you just probably on your feet, like something what we are, but probably on your feet for like most of the day and doing lessons and doing all this stuff. Like, obviously that's the opposite to what a lot of people struggle with. They obviously want to go the other way, and they'll probably say, yeah, all right, Dave, like, just, you know, you're on and off. But that is a legitimate struggle that I have with some clients as well, that have, you know, high active jobs and then obviously don't want to just shove their face with a load of rubbish to put on the weight. So how's that journey been for you of trying to add some lean muscle, which has been the main focus for you, and obviously how slow that process has been, and you having to be patient through that journey, really?
It's interesting, as like I was getting slightly frustrated with it because it was so slow, but actually you guys might agree, I don't know, but the fact that it is slow is probably a good thing. Because it's like, oh well, maybe this is more of a habit, like long-term thing I can do, and it can be gradual versus trying to put on 10 kilograms, which is not going to be happening anytime soon. So for me, it was just like, okay, well, I feel like I get blown away. If there's like a strong gust of wind, I can go. Do you know what I mean? Like, I could easily go. So that's got to be more useful to me to carry a little bit more weight. But also, let's go into like why. Like, my family, like, they're all so ill. Like, they're literally just, there's so much illness in my family. Like, I come from like a big family in Ireland, where my nan was one of like 9 sisters and 5 brothers, and they've all got things wrong with them, and there's, you know, history of heart disease and all sorts of things. And I think, right, well, you need to look after yourself a little bit better. So this was a few years ago. I thought, right, just look after yourself a little bit better now. So there's the reason for doing it outside of just golf as well. But actually, at the same time, I actually want to get better at golf as well. And for my trousers not to just like fall down as well at the same time. Do you know what I mean? So those are the reasons for why I was doing it. So I wanted to try and put a little bit more weight on just for those simple reasons. I think actually it's going to be healthier for me too. So I started with trying to eat more, but I was eating quite a lot anyway. So there is that, whether it's metabolism, I think it's just lifestyle. It's like I've got a sports watch. I don't wear it anymore because I look down and I've done 22,000 steps and I've been to the gym and I've done whatever and ever. So it's like, okay, well, it's pretty pointless me having that. So I kind of went on for 3,500 calories a day of pretty good food, but also not being super strict with myself as well. So if I want to eat some garbage, I can eat some garbage. Yeah. Just don't make it my main part of my diet. Just don't eat garbage all the time. So that was working well. So I kind of went from 62 to about 64, but that took me 18 months.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's I know that's some people's weekend.
How many calories?
I went from 3,500, which I found super, super hard. So eventually that came down to about 3,000. So that's 3 eggs in the morning with a steak, with spinach, then oats with honey. Then I'd have a second breakfast. Then I'd have 2 lunches, which would be beef with quinoa, chicken wrap. Then I'd eat a whole packet of corn cakes with some like butter on it. Eat that. Then I'd come home and eat an omelette. And then I'd have dinner. Then I'd have some protein shakes. And by the end of the day, that's a lot. And I found the more I was eating, the more I could eat.
Yeah, 100%. I've been on the very similar journey that I've always found it really hard to put on weight. The start of the year, I made a decision to, because hurt my back in October, so just wanted to add some more mass, a bit more strength there as well. But similar to you, like on our feet all day. Yeah. Like there's almost not enough hours in the day in between coaching clients, sleeping, trying to have a relationship outside of that. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just eating 24/7. Like it's really hard, and a lot of people, like Joe mentioned earlier, think losing weight's really, really hard. I've worked with clients for years and years. I actually find clients that are trying to put on weight and do it the right way. Just like you were mentioning there, you're not eating garbage, you're not just having McDonald's breakfast, lunch and dinner. It's really hard to do, especially if you do have a busy, active lifestyle.
I schedule in some things, like, so this is fun for me. Do you know what I mean? Like I schedule in, like, I really like a McDonald's breakfast, but I don't want to eat it all the time. So I want to look forward to it. I'm going to have it. So I put it in my diary. For like once a month, so it might be like the 23rd of the month. I'm going to go get that, and I'm going to enjoy that. I'm going to sit in the car park, and I'm going to enjoy that. And but when I was super on it, it was in my diary, and I was like, oh, do you know what? I actually don't even fancy it. I don't fancy it now. I've eaten pretty well for a while, and I'm like, I don't crave that anymore. Yeah. Sugar is the worst thing for me. Like if I start sugar, I want more. And I think for an awful lot of people, it's like, well, you can actually worry about that tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? And I think if you can get in your head that tomorrow is today, actually, that is the thing, isn't it? It's so easy to start tomorrow, and it's hard. It's hard. Like we're sort of, our brains are hardwired into these habits of just like making you feel better when you eat something that's really, really nice. And it's like, for me, it's like, okay, well, you've got to, in my opinion, keep that in there, because you don't want to be miserable and you don't want to put on more weight. You just like try and lose a little bit. Like go enjoy yourself. Yeah. But if it's important to you, you'll change it. I think some people like the idea of losing weight, but actually they only like the idea of it. They don't want to. Yeah. You got to want to.
Taking it back a little bit, what did you see changes when you started implementing this high calorie diet, implementing this strength training? Did you see changes to, say, distance, swing speed? How did your body feel? Were you able to play more and anything like that?
So my irons, like statistically, are pretty poor when it comes down to launch angle and spin. So I'm launching a 7 iron at the angle of an 8, so I'm a club weaker, which makes me, with the speed that I have, about 15 yards shorter than I could be based on launch angle. But when I play golf, I'm generally the longest with irons. When I play with other golf pros, generally, I'm never the longest with driver, and that's technique. So my swing speed is pretty good, I would suggest, and then my technique's good enough to hit the ball a decent distance. But give me a 4 or 5 iron, I'm good, and give me a driver and I'm average. Yeah. And it's a bit of a funny one. So my mission now is to kind of like get better at that. But in answer to your question, the strength training has made me hit irons way further. Really? Way further. So I can feel like I can operate from what feels like potentially a shorter swing, which is more repeatable. I could deliver better angles, let's say. They're not perfect, but it just seems to go further. Yeah. I have a lot more strength, but I don't feel like I have to go at it. Whereas before, to get the distance, I felt like I had to go at it. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest difference, is like, can I play at what feels like 90%, where golf is easy? Yeah.
Which
can
might
go.
have been your previous kind of 100% absolutely ripping it as hard as you can.
Yeah. Now it's just like, actually, I feel like I can just get the distance with an iron shot much easier than before. So there's some work to be done with the driver, but I'm kind of aware of my flaws technically, and occasionally that goes really well as well. So I played for the first time this year the other day, and I hit some drivers. I was like, wow, that's like really good.
Yeah.
Really good. Like, I want to go and play more, because if I could hit them all like that, you could do well, Dave. And then your ego gets fueled, and it's like, do you know what? You could go like into the Open, and you could go into the Order of Merit and stuff and what have you, and then but yeah. So without doubt, I'm stronger now in my 40s than I was in my 20s.
Yeah,
for sure. Sam was about to say that. Did you see that? Sam was about to say, "Oh my God, is he 40 something?"
Yeah,
he was.
I was.
He was like,
his
jaw.
You brought up earlier that you had kids, so I was thinking, maybe like mid 30s.
Oh my God!
When I first met you, and then you let me know your age, I was shocked.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I think I look old though. Like, I've been looking in the mirror and thinking, "God, you're finished, Dave. You're finished."
But I think this.
You don't think I'm finished?
No.
Okay.
Plenty left in it.
It goes back to what you were saying earlier about seeing people on the golf course and thinking they're 10, 20 years younger.
Yeah.
You're not sat down at a desk, you're on your feet pretty much all of the day. You're moving, you're training, you're eating well, and it goes to show, right? You look 5, 6, 7 years younger than
Thanks,
you
man.
are.
I'll come again if you let me on.
I want to ask you a few more golfing things.
Yeah, go for it.
I find it easy to, I just like picking people's brains. They know a lot about golf. I want to ask you a couple of which of these do you prefer, and just a little bit of justification on which one.
Yeah, go
if
for
you
it.
don't mind. So my first one is shot shaping or hitting one shape.
Okay.
And being very good at hitting that one shape and fitting that shot shape in.
Okay, so I know some golfers that are very good at hitting one shape all the time, and then I think from ultimate consistency point of view, if you can play one shape, then play it, because I know some golfers that play it only with a fade. And they're very predictable, and they know what their miss is. Occasionally they pull it a little bit with a short iron, and occasionally they leak it right a little bit with a longer club. They don't all of a sudden get a snap hook. They don't all of a sudden get a massive push, because the science doesn't allow a massive push if they're putting the same swing on it. So I'm really different with that. Like I went down a path just after I turned pro of trying to be too straight. I enjoyed golf a little bit less when I was trying to be too straight. Give me a wedge and I'll try and hit it straight, but anything sort of 8 iron above, I want to see some kind of shape, and invariably it's right to left or left to right. It's a real toss up between the two. You say swing a club and hit it, I'll draw it. And that would be my sort of standard shot. I'd say, right, there's no intent of the shot, just hit a shot. That's what will tend to happen. So I kind of see most shots right to left, but when the pin's tucked short right and I want to go for it, then a draw's not going to be the shot. So I want to be able to play the other shots and stuff as well. So how would I encourage golfers? I would encourage golfers to learn real basic shot shaping, to the point where they don't necessarily learn club face angle first, but learn to hit a push and learn to hit a pull. Then they know what neutral's like. So in terms of explaining that terminology, can you hit a ball that goes straight right with no curvature, and can you hit a ball that goes straight left with no curvature? Then can you show me that 3 times push to the right, then 3 times pull to the left, and now can you show me something in between? And once they've done that a few times and got the reps up of the extremes, maybe then they get a good understanding of what straight feels like. And what did they like the most? What felt comfortable? Did it feel easy to pull it, or did it feel easy to push it? Then you might gravitate towards a draw or pull based on what kind of feels more normal to you.
I really like that.
So that's my thesis on it. And a few people that I teach golf to, their handicaps might be 22. They want a fix, like they want to lose a slice and they want to fix a hook, but they never seem to articulate what they really want. So a lot of golf coaches, nothing against them, because I've done this before as well, that will try and fix the problem without actually really finding what they want. Actually, maybe what if this golfer wants to get really versatile? What if they want to get really good? Well, they're 22, they're not going to tell me they want to turn pro, but they might want to, because they're probably feeling embarrassed to say I want to be a golf pro at 22 handicap. But what if they really wanted to, and what if they had the time to? So wouldn't it be a shame not to prod them a little bit into learning some really, really good skills like shot shaping?
Yeah.
And actually what you can find is really high handicappers can learn shot shaping really quickly if you do it on a small scale of pitch swing length or half swings. Can you push it? Can you pull it? Can you hit it in between? Yeah. And then all of a sudden that little window of opportunity comes and they can get as good as they want to get.
Yeah.
Amazing
I
answer.
really like that. I really
Great
like that a lot.
Thanks.
Oh, here we go. I'm excited for number 2 then. Block or random practice?
Block or random practice. So I know a little bit about spacing of like sessions and stuff and what have you. So I think there was this test, which is interesting, about people learning the piano with no skill. No, you've never played the piano before. If you have, you just pressed keys and you didn't know what you were doing. Okay, so they got something like 100 people, 50 people that had coaching every day for 30 days, and they had half an hour a day, and then the other 50 odd people had huge intensive sessions, so that they had exactly the same amount of coaching, but they were doing it on 10-hour stretches, let's say. And the results of that are nobody that did the mass practice was better than any of the people that stretched it out.
Yeah.
So stretching it out and making it smaller amounts and really manageable seems to create this kind of neural pathway which kind of puts it into what I think is called your prefrontal cortex. I'm not an expert on the brain, but I do know that it does take a little bit of time, and the little time to digest or download it into your head takes a little bit of time. So in terms of practice, I would say go there with a plan and what you're going to do, spread it out and do little. A bit like what you were saying about your mobility.
Yeah,
a bit like you're saying about your mobility. Just do it regularly, make it part of, like, you brush your teeth, you do your mobility.
Yeah.
You know, like you can do that. In terms of what you might be asking me there about how you might run that as a session, go there with a plan, and don't be afraid to make your plan with, I'm only going to smash driver as hard as I can today, as long as it's a plan. Because you might learn something from it. You might quickly find out you don't learn anything from that. But going in there with a bit of an idea of, I'm going to do 10 balls to warm up, I'm going to do 20 balls where I drill technique over and over and over again, and then I'm going to get 20 balls to targets, and I'm not going to think about technique. Then you can come away with that thinking, did I train it enough to be able to implement that into the golf course? If the answer is no, just keep training it. And if the answer is yes, keep training it as well.
Yeah. Does it?
Solid. I've got a couple of...
Oh my God.
I said I wouldn't be able to ask these questions, because I know the stories, but I would like to hear the stories.
Sure.
So I don't know if Sam's got any other questions, because this is probably going to get him a little bit stupid now.
Go for it.
So
Absolutely
I'm going to go. So the story I would like you to tell first, because we're on to golf coaching. You were talking about a little bit about coaching. We were talking a little bit about like lessons and learning. So this is related to that first of all. So the first one, can you please? I'm going to read out the cue to the question.
Okay.
And I'm going to see if you know what story I'm talking about.
Okay.
So I've written it down in my notes. It says upside down glasses lesson.
Ah, yeah. So this was like literally in like the first week of my coaching. You guys would have loved this as mobility experts, but I was giving a lesson to a guy. He hit it nowhere. He goes, I just hit it nowhere, Dave. And I knew nothing about golf coaching then. I just literally turned pro. And I was like, okay, cool. What? So you just want a little bit more distance? He goes, yeah, that's good. Okay, so he's there and he's like, he's got his chin right in against his chest, like really against his chest. So if you're listening to this at home and you want to try this, stick your chin right in against your chest so you're kind of looking right down at your ground, almost at your feet, and then try and turn your hips and turn your shoulders. What you'll soon find is the shoulder will get in the way. And so you actually can't, your mobility is really, really restricted. What that's doing to your upper vertebrae is probably not great either. So it's going to affect your mobility. So this guy, he had his chin right down and couldn't move. So I said to him, oh yeah, you've got really no mobility here at all. You're going to just put your chin up a little bit, sort your posture out. It's a bit rounded as well, so you've got a nice straight spine over the chin up. And have a few practice swings. And he goes, oh, this feels great, Dave, only I can't see the ball anymore. And I was like, oh, okay, so he's got a pair of bifocals. And he's got bifocals on. So he's got bifocals on. And so he's looking through the bit which he would use for like the reading bit now instead of looking through the top. And actually, if we think about it now, it's probably the reason why he does what he does. Because of those glasses, he was probably looking through the top bit. It's probably a little bit easier to see the ball. So this is literally my first week. So I just grabbed his glasses and I flipped them upside down on his face, and he's looking at me like I'm on drugs. And so I've put them upside down on his head, remember, like Dennis Taylor. And so he's ripping it. He's absolutely ripping it. He's gone from like 120 to like 180. And I was like, wow, I love golf coaching. This is brilliant.
I can just imagine him walking around the club.
His face, he was just like, this is great, but I can't go and play golf like this. And I was like, oh, maybe there's an investment. I tried him without the glasses as well, which he could move well, but he couldn't hit it very well. So I said, well, let's go get the glasses, you know. So that golf lesson cost him a fortune, probably, in new glasses. But, you know, My final year's coaching exam, when I turned pro, so in year 3 you have to do like a live lesson in front of some pretty scary assessors and other golf pros and stuff and what have you, and I had almost a mirror image of that, only the guy didn't have glasses. So the guy says, look, I'm pretty consistent, I just don't hit anywhere, I've got some golf days. I said, do you have time to practice? He said, nope. I said, so whatever I tell you today is going to be pretty simple? He was like, yep, okay, cool. Hit his chin down, couldn't turn, put his chin up. Don't go too crazy so that you look ridiculous. Just get your chin up a little bit and just focus on rotation, turn your back on the target. I didn't know much about mobility then, but he could instantly do it. Did no assessment with him, but he could instantly do it and just whacked it further. And when somebody has that, it actually affects their path as well generally. So when they don't rotate very well in the backswing and they tend to rotate a lot in the downswing, they'll just pull it and slice it. Actually, by turning better, he started going from like a slice to a draw and further. Yeah. It's just like such a quick win. My advice to many people is just get your posture really, really good. Get your setup amazing. Get your weight distribution good. Arms hanging down. Get the handle pointing in the right place. Give yourself the platform to be able to rotate. Yeah. Because if you get one of those elements wrong, distance to the ball, weight distribution, arms hanging down, handle in the wrong place, you can't move very well. And then you're not going to be a consistent golfer. So there is a lot of quick wins. There'll be an awful lot of golf pros that will talk about only trying to do long-term development and there's no quick fixes. I think there are quick fixes, and there are some. I've given golf lessons to some people in the past where actually they've dined down on that one lesson for a long time, and they've got to where they wanted to get to, and then they might reassess. They don't need a plan always straight away.
Yeah. I think something like that with setup. The reason why I like setup so much is they've got we don't have to go through the learning process as much. Where when you're trying to change something that happens in the swing, you've got to try and change the pathway, right? Yeah. Where something that's set up, if they've got a little cue for that, you can almost quite quickly get the setup better and get them doing that instantly. And I think that's where the idea of no quick fixes come in, is because we can't change our natural movement quickly, but we can change how we start that movement and then let it flow from there again. Right? Almost like setting the start point in a different place. Same with exercise technique, right? Someone might squat in a certain way all the time, and they're not necessarily going to change that pattern that they like to squat in, but suddenly if we change their stance, or we put a bar on their back, or we do something else, then suddenly they move better, or they move differently, and that differently might be a little bit more optimal for them in that moment, and they don't even want to think about it, right? So that's a fun one.
Interesting how people sort of core DNA of their swing doesn't alter hugely, and like what feels like minor adjustments aren't minor adjustments. So like we've all been guilty of this, but if you ever look on Instagram and you look at people's before and afters, I look at them and think, actually, I'm not sure which one's better. And I study people's golf swings for a living. And it's not until afterwards I realised, oh my God, the change that they've made, it's actually, in my head, I don't really like it. But, it don't look as good, but they might hit it better. But sometimes you can't even tell the difference. Anyway, but that feeling in their body is wildly different. Wildly different, yeah.
So true. I like that. My next one, I've just realised the cue is going to give away the punchline of the story. So I'm going to have to show it to you.
Okay.
And I just hope you remember the story again.
Well, I hope so too.
The anticipation.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Do you know what? Right, so this...
I can't wait for Sam to hear this story, because this is amazing. This is very near. This is really early in my golf coaching career, and I'm like, I've just really kind of thought, what have you got yourself into here? I was kind of pretty self-aware as a golf pro, in as much that I think I'm not going to be on the tour. I'll play a few pro events, but coaching's going to be my thing. So like early on, we've got this glasses guy. Now we've got this guy. Big Pete, his name is. So he said, Dave, I've got this slice, and you've never seen a slice like it. I said, trust me, Pete, I've seen slices. Yeah, I've seen some big ass slices in my time. There's nothing that you can do that shocked me. He goes, it's pretty big. Okay, cool. So Big Pete is big. Big Pete is big. Yeah, so Big Pete's got legs like my legs, which are pretty skinny, but the top half of him is 3 of me. Okay, so he's a little bit top heavy anyway. So Pete, I'll try and explain this because it's a podcast, but imagine whipping it like really inside in the backswing, like so inside that the body turn's done by the time your club head's got to your ankles. Okay, so he's going nowhere but lifting. So he's gone really inside to really lifty, so much so his like hands are kind of in front of his head, and then he's turned back at it, so the club's like way out in front. So much so that he's hit it right off the heel, straight into his ankle, Right, so his path has to be 45 degrees left. 45 degrees left. So his path's 45 degrees left. So the ball has flown into his ankle. It's took him off his feet because Big Pete has probably got 110 mile an hour swing speed, and he's straight. I've never heard a yelp like it. But it's up in the air on the deck. Big Pete's hit the ground. I'm like, oh,
are you all right? And he was like, no. I was like, is that what you do? But I mean, if he'd got the face back on it, it would have started a long way left, and it probably, if the face was open relative to that, then it would have had a big slice on it. So you could analyse the ball flight from what happened. I didn't give him another lesson. I didn't give him another lesson after that lesson, but yeah. It was,
I want to see that before and after on Instagram. That would be a good before and after.
I'll see if I can replicate the swing, because it's an interesting one. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a common fault actually. Now, if you want to link this slightly to mobility, is people whipping the club really in first on the way back, so really, and then very, very lifty.
Yeah.
And think about what that trail elbow might look like. So, for those of you at home, if you imagine your right forearm should perhaps be nearer vertical than it is horizontal. Yeah. So sometimes parallel to the spine is okay, depending on what your face angle looks like. But if your right forearm is kind of nearer vertical than horizontal, then that's generally a better position to be in. But when you kind of whip it in behind you, and there's nowhere else to go but up generally, unless you do a really small swing. So lifting the club up, and then across is quite a common fault. So I don't really care too much about what people's takeaways look like in that first kind of position when it gets to flat with the floor, but it can be influential in terms of getting you into a better position. Ultimately, the ball doesn't care where your takeaway is, but actually it can really influence like a general shape to your swing. So if you go really in and across, could be difficult.
Yeah.
So.
Amazing. I don't know, that story just gets me. I knew it was coming, I knew you'd find it funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hitting your own leg with a slice. It's pretty extreme. If there was one last bit of advice you would leave everyone with, what would it be? From all of your experience of seeing a lot of golf swings, seeing a lot of golfers, seeing a lot of people hit the golf point to their own leg, what's the one bit of advice you would give, apart from wearing shin pads? What would be the one bit of advice you would give people after listening to this episode today?
I think just start. Start a journey, because it's exciting. Most people, if they're honest, they kind of stay the same and don't really get as much better than they have been for a long time. And they're kind of stuck on a handicap, and they're searching down the wrong path to try and improve. Like, lessons will help for sure, but try and do lots of little things. So like mobility a little bit, do 5 minutes of mobility, maybe look at your diet a little bit, maybe just practice one time a week more than you currently do, maybe get to golf 20 minutes earlier, and because you can handle that. Do you know what I mean? Like, do lots of manageable things to make quite a big difference. It's not always just a big swing overhaul. It's like a real combination of lots of things. Also, so I'll give you an example. I can play guitar, but my guitaring is average. Okay, so I wanted to buy a really expensive guitar quite a few years ago, but I was too embarrassed to play it in the shop because everybody looks like they're from Led Zeppelin, and I just don't look like I match. Well, I did in that picture you showed me earlier. But I was embarrassed going into the guitar shop. So he goes, let's see you play a little bit. I said, no, don't worry about it, I'll just buy it. And I got the cash out and bought the guitar because I didn't want to play it in front of the guy. And I think some people are really bad at golf, or at least they think they're really bad at golf. So therefore they don't even go and have the golf lesson because they think, I'll get a bit better first when I have the golf lesson, or I'll just lose a little bit more weight before I go to the gym. And it never starts. Just make a decision to start, and then you'll be thankful for actually, give yourself something exciting, something to work towards, and then find out why it's important for you to do it as well. So, if it's the weight loss thing, think about why you want to do it. Why do you want to get better at golf? Is it to impress your friends, or is it for your own enjoyment? Come up with a little plan, but try lots of different things. And when it comes to specifics like mobility and strength training, speak to guys like you, and get, because you'll know from gym stuff, like how you do the exercises is super, super important in terms of the form of some of these things. So just get a little bit of expert advice, but my main advice is just to start and don't put it off, because you're going to be playing golf for so much longer and you're going to enjoy it way more when you've got kind of a better understanding of what you're doing.
Absolutely, love that, and it mirrors so much that we've been talking about on these podcasts, which is really interesting. It's so refreshing for me to speak to a golf pro who does train and knows about training. Most of my pros that are clients have never stepped foot in a gym before, yet the golf swing is such an athletic movement. It's like you're just leaving so much on the table, and it's fantastic to hear that you're recommending all these things to other golfers and other clients out there. It's really enjoyed it.
Well, I do think also as well, just to touch on that, like the gym can be a little bit scary for some people, but what you might soon work out is people are so wrapped up in what they're doing there. You're going to think, everyone's looking at me. They're not looking at you.
Exactly.
They've got zero interest.
People are so thinking, oh God, he's going to think I'm absolutely awful. He's thinking exactly the same thing you are. He's not paying any attention to you at all.
Yeah, and you'll thank yourself for doing it at some point, because actually, yeah, you'll get into it and you'll enjoy it after a while. It becomes fun, it becomes part of your habit, and it becomes part of the whole bigger picture of enjoyment.
100%. Dave, where can people find you if they're going to follow your journeys now?
Instagram, Dave Bartlett Golf Professional on there. That's kind of where most of the stuff is. There are other things coming out soon, but I can't mention those because that's too big a secret.
Oh, big.
Too big a secret.
Also, your podcast as well. Give a little plug to your podcast.
South Coast Pro Golf Show on Spotify.
Yes. We'll stick all the details in the notes of this podcast. Dave, thank you so much for coming on, man. It's been great fun.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Joe. You boys are heroes. Keep doing what you're doing.
Speak to you soon, man.